Hello, this is Joe Peters from MomFit with Joe Peters. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network and H.E.R. Network of Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Single TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you are downloading, make sure that you rate and leave a comment for us. The app is free. Single TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV Stick, Roku and Roku Stick. Also on all smartphone TVs from 2016 forward. Now, today we are having a nugget and a great pleasure. We have been talking about something that all us moms wondering, especially new moms, and that is when we are entering motherhood, when we are learning how to be mom, we have a bunch of people giving us opinions and telling us advice and telling us what to do and how to do it. So it is my pleasure to welcome my dear friend, Georgia Vanderville. Georgia is a very successful entrepreneur. She having her own business for the last 20 years, seven-figure business every year. She's also the mom of two beautiful kids. And she is one of those people that had the biggest heart. And because of that heart, she's been able to actually open so many doors. She's a two times best-selling author. And her mission in life is helping others to actually find their center through meditation and through inner work. And she's here today as my guest to talk about that noise of you as a mom, what you can do with that, and how you can actually don't get confused. So, Georgia, thank you so much for joining us, for being here with us. And let's start. Let's gonna start with a little bit of your story, and we will go from there.
Wonderful. Hi, Joanna. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you. Let's see. Um, I feel like you kind of shared the story because you're so awesome at it. Let's see. Um, where would you like me to start? Would you?
I would like to, well, we were talking about this, and I will think that it was going to add a lot of value on what you were saying around how the information and the noise can be loud for moms, and how that can confuse them, and how they can actually filter that into trusting their own self. Why you don't talk to us a little bit about that?
That sounds wonderful. One of the things is that I feel to be able to understand and recognize those moments, we kind of have to go back to when those moments did happen. So for me, uh, we have a lot of different things that happen in our lives, and we have a lot of different times when people are asking us to do certain things, or people believe that what they think and what they feel is correct. And we always say things from our own experiences because we know that we've been able to survive by carrying on the way that we did things in the past. So we'd like to share those and pass those on to others. We had when I was, so my children, my two boys, they are now 10 and 11. And I'm very glad that they've survived this far because at certain times I didn't think that they were going to. But really, I think recognizing that other people's opinions and ideas were changing the direction that I felt that my children should go in was when, specifically with nursing, actually. Nursing was one of the hardest things for us because I felt that it was one of the most important things to do. And with my first child, he came out wonderful. He was so much fun, and nursed him, had no opposition from anyone. I had a little bit of a hard time myself with that, but I didn't have any opposition. And then at 6 months, I ended up getting pregnant with my second child. So you can get pregnant while you're nursing. That's a fallacy if you believe you can't. And with that, I nursed my first son for another 3 months. And during that, nursing him, everything was good at first, but then once it hit about the 2.5 month mark, when I would nurse him, I would get so cold and I would just shake and shiver, and it was almost painful. So we ended up not being able to nurse him past 9 months. So we ended up bottle feeding him after 9 months. Just separating from him at that point was tough enough. But then along came my second child, and I decided I was going to nurse him until he was 2 years old. I just thought that that was the right thing, and that's what I had wanted to do with my first child. And after, uh, at about with the 1 year mark, we ended up having some influential people in our family who really wanted to make sure that their ideas and their thoughts came into play. And they loved the idea of being able to nurse my first child with a bottle. Like that was something that they just thought was incredible. And they loved being able to do the formula because it reminded them of going back to when they were younger and when they had their own children. So they thought that that was the right thing to do. So, but let me back up real quick. Part of it was that there was money involved. So when there's money involved, there's always a little bit of control. And what had happened was we were told, there is this website. You can go to this website and you can order anything off of this website that you want for babies. We're like, oh, that's amazing. It's hooked up to our credit card. You're welcome to do it. So we said, okay, that's cool. And they said, make sure that you buy all of your diapers on here specifically. It was more really about diapers than anything. So then we could order all the diapers and all the wipes that we needed. So we would go on there and we would do that. And then with my second child, they said, yes, we're going to continue this. She said, okay, that's really cool. Thank you. Because diapers are really expensive, like you know. And it got to a certain point where it became listen to me or this is going to be taken away. We were like, oh, okay. And about the 1 year mark, I started to get this continued influence of nursing your child past 9 months is unnecessary. It's already been a year. You need to stop this. You have to wean the baby. The baby is so attached to you. You have to get rid of this child. You have to separate the child from you. We're like, oh, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. And we fought it for about another 4 or 5 months or so. And finally, it ended up becoming a thing where it was causing so much contention that instead of going to the people and saying, hey, look, I understand that this is what you feel you want, but I feel that this is the right thing, we ended up stopping nursing our child against my better judgment. And I let somebody else's influence change and kind of almost destroy this relationship that I had with my child. And it was really, really painful. And because of that whole thing, they felt like they had to fight to force their opinion on me. So then they became more dominant and quite aggressive. And I felt like I didn't have a voice. So I became kind of almost sheepish. And I was unable to say, hey, wait a second. But if I had recognized that that was what was happening, I could have gone and said, you know what? No, I love you, but no, this is what's going to happen. And then everything would have carried forward just fine. And if it hadn't have, if they had said, well, we're not going to hang out with you ever again because you're nursing your child, well, then I would have said, okay. But I still would have had that relationship with my child, but I didn't recognize that that was even an option. So I had to first recognize that that was an option before I could do anything. And yeah, I did end up losing that relationship with my child for a bit. And I feel like he needed more nutrients than a bottle could give him. And that was one big thing that I learned from.
I love that you're being vulnerable enough to share with us your journey, because MomFit is not about only the things that work. MomFit is about us as moms helping new moms to learn from our mistakes. Like I share about my struggles in the fourth trimester. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's important that all of you mamas that are hearing, there is a couple of things that Georgia touched that I want to reinforce and expand on. The first one is we need to understand from where the advice comes from. And what I'm talking about that is the 2 generations before us were highly influenced by formula, because around the 40s and the 50s, actually in the 50s, doctors will encourage you to not breastfeed your kid, and they will send you from the hospital with ton of formula. So that is how they grow up with, because on those times the food industry label and the food industry strategy and goal was profit, and they knew that if mamas keep breastfeeding their babies, they will not make profit. So that's the first one that I want all of you to understand. When people bring you advice, the first thing is, where this come from? The second one is the Health World Organization and the AAP actually recommend that the best time to breastfeed a kid is up to 2 years, like Georgia was feeling before. Like that is worldwide the average. Unfortunately, in the United States, is one of the lowest times. And there is something very interesting about this, and that is breastfeeding times are related and correlated to maternity leaves. So countries that had lower maternal leaves had lower breastfeeding, and they push more into formula because they want their people back into
The
the,
workforce.
the business to profit. That's the second one. The third one, and then I want to be very clear that I love doctors, that my baby had a doctor, Georgia's kids had doctors. We are not anti doctors, but I'm also all about you understanding the truth and who is in your team. In average, a pediatrician spend only 4 hours learning about sleep, and less than 10 hours learning about breastfeeding. So even if the advice don't come from family, like G is telling, but even if it come from your pediatrician, it's good that you have those tools, mama, to actually say, okay, wait a second. Are you giving me this advice from where? Like, because that is, Georgia says something very powerful, and that is, sometimes we as moms think that because other mom had their babies and their babies are big, they know better than us. And the reality is, that is what is so fascinating, what Georgia is saying, is how we can start recognizing that is their opinion, and that their opinion is not absolute, is not science, and that their opinion is getting in between us and our intuition and what we think is best for our child. So G, let's gonna go a little bit more on that, and after that traumatic experience, how you heal from that, and then how you start paying more attention to that influence and start actually being able to notice that and say, yeah, this is your opinion, but what I feel for my child best is this.
The How did I heal from that? I healed from that by recognizing that it happened and making a decision, although it took me several years to actually recognize that. And I did it through a lot of meditation, to be perfectly honest with you, because I had to do a lot of soul searching and figure out why I was frustrated with the different events that had happened. And I had to figure out um, how I could recreate that strong relationship with my child that I had wanted and I wasn't feeling like I was getting. And so through meditation, I just recognized that I needed to spend more time with my son. And so I started creating these times where it would just be us. And so we did it more through time as opposed to, um, I have to apologize. If you can hear beeping in the background, my kids are actually waking up right now. So I can hear their alarm going off.
That is the
Um,
mom thing reality. We are moms, we have kids, we have babies. Don't worry about it.
well, so it was basically just recognizing that I needed to build a strong relationship with my son. So starting to come with that, build this relationship with him and give the time and the energy and the effort that he needed as a person. And then on top of it as well, one of the big things that happened was we had all gone as a family out to eat with the influential people that we were talking about. And there was 6 of us, so my 4 and those 2. And we were sitting at dinner, and I watched one of the adults be incredibly mean to my child. And I recognized, and I watched him see the looks on their faces, and actually I could watch it in his mind just compute and create this memory for him of how to disrespect other people. And at that point, that was when I said, wait a second, enough is enough. I'd had enough. And that was, I think, the key moment when I recognized that things were not happening like a healthy relationship should happen. So then I was able to take a step back and say no. And I, at that point too, that was really the point where I started to find my voice, was at that dinner, because we left the dinner and I realized that I hadn't said anything to them about it. I had taken my son for a walk so we could spend time together. But then instead of sitting there and saying, hey, wait a second, I see what just happened, you need to respect my child, I let them continue with their negativity and we left. So I created just this bad habit, a bad loop. And once I could recognize that, then in the future, when there was anything, I could say, you know what, I'm sorry, but this is not what we're going to, and I could address the issue right then and there, politely and kindly. But then once I started to address the issue, it stopped happening. And that was when I realized as well that if I had gone back to being when my son was a year old, I could have said, no, I'm going to continue to nurse him, but thanks for your opinion. But that was when I recognized it.
So many great nuggets for moms that I hope that if you are watching this, put the comments on. This is so powerful and so important for new moms, because one of the objectives of MomFit is that we as a village grow together, that you new moms learn from G, from me, from all the other guest speakers, so your curve is smoother and easier than us. A couple of things that are important to point out are: the first one is, notice how um it's interesting how you felt that need to have a stronger connection with your second baby, even when you breastfeed your first child even less. But I think it is interesting how it was because the second time was somebody external making you have the choice, versus the first time was your body and the new baby. So the flow, even when was less time, the flow was different and you didn't felt that somebody taking away from you. And the second one is, how old was your baby when that happened in the restaurant, in that dinner?
At that point, he was about 6 years old.
Okay.
So I hate to say it took me that long, but it really did. Honestly, if I'm being truthful, it really did take me a long time to recognize.
And that is exactly what I want, the point that I want to have, and that is that we get into this mindset that as soon as we push our baby out to the world, we know all the answers as a mom, that we know how to be moms, we know how to do motherhood. And the beautiful thing about what G's sharing is, it was a traumatic event that she learned and took her 5 years, because her baby was 1 year when she stopped. So it took her 5 years of actually working to actually pinpoint where the issue was, and actually feeling confident enough and strong enough to step up for herself. I want to ask you a question, G, because that is very important before we go to the next part. Is, how big of a support system, of a team around you had when your baby was small? And do you think that that period of time will be shorter if at the time that these people start influencing you, you actually had other people in your team supporting you to say, no, breastfeeding until 2 years is amazing and is what the baby needs? Do you think that having that balance and having that people around you to support and reinforce your intuition will make a difference for you to feel different about how these people were pulling in?
I do think it would have made a huge difference. So, for example, I grew up in a very religious community. So when I was growing up, my mom had tons of support. She had all of the other women that were at church with her, and this was a strong community. But then with me, it was just me, just my husband, and then we had really, honestly, we were the only two, the other two people that I'm talking about who were influential were really the only support system that was there. So would I have loved to have other moms? Yes. And I did eventually meet other moms and we created like little mom groups. But I almost felt sometimes like I didn't have anyone to talk to and that these two people had all the answers already. So it wasn't necessary for me to go and continue talking to other people. And if I did continue to talk to other people, I might be sharing too much of myself. And then if I shared too much of myself, it could be a little bit vulnerable. And there was so many different bits of traffic coming in that I just didn't want to create a collision. So I really only got support from these two people. And I felt like I was supposed to respect them, especially because of the money factor.
And that is something so important, and it's one of the reasons why we create the MomFit village, because one of the things that happen is we get that G was saying so beautiful, we get that sometimes even shame and guilt of saying like, oh, if I share that I'm struggling, if I share that I'm having this problem, then that will mean that I'm a bad mom or that I don't have the answer that I should have. And that is what society is putting us. And one of the things that I keep sharing all over is, and I know Jean knows this, when I was in Africa with one of the oldest lineage of humanity, the H.E.R tribe, you were not able to find out which mom belonged to which baby. And I think we talked about this last episode. And it's the same concept that G's mom had. We as females are not supposed to do this alone. We are not supposed to give birth and raise a child by ourselves. I know society is being putting that label as we need to be proud because I did it by myself. That is not how we are supposed to do it. That actually create a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of guilt, and a lot of regrets long term. So it's matter of us getting into that part of having the right support team. That is why it's so important when we are getting pregnant, when we are in the in the fourth trimester, to make sure that we have that team around us that is aligned with our values, with our goals as a moms, with our dreams as a moms. So when these storms come in, we have that, almost I call it like a board of directors. We have that board of directors and advisors that are there holding our hand, hugging us, saying, Mama, you got this, let's gonna see this, let's gonna see this, let's gonna see this. So thank you so much for that, G. I have a question for you. Go ahead.
I think real quick, because you had said that we need a board of directors, and I do actually really agree with that. I think that that's an incredible idea. And I really like the concept. I haven't heard of it like that before, so I really, really like that. Like how you said that. One of the things is just making sure that your board of directors is represents what you want. And I think that that's key because I did sort of have a really small board of directors. It might have just been two people, but they didn't represent what I wanted, but I didn't recognize that.
And that is such a great point. That is one of the reasons why when I'm working with my moms in my groups, I tell them a couple of things. I talk about the board of directors as everybody that support you, starting from your midwife, your OGB, your pediatrician, your doula, your MomFit coach, whoever is supporting you. The first thing that I tell my mamas is do an interview like if you were going to hire them. Why? Because it's important that what you were saying, that your board of directors is aligned. Imagine if you're thinking like motherhood is not a sprint. Motherhood is a marathon. Motherhood is a marathon of 20 years. Imagine how painful it will be for you to run a marathon for 20 years with the wrong gear. And imagine for the ones that are being thinking in business or are mompreneurs, imagine how hard it will be for you to run a business for 20 years when your goals and your values are different than your board of director values. That will be unbearable. So it's not only having a board of directors, but having a board of directors that fits the kind of mom that you want to be, the kind of mom that you are dreaming to be, the kind of mom that you wish you had sometime, because you didn't have. That is my case with my baby. I'm saying like the mom that I am is the mom that I wish I had and I didn't. And is that it was important to have, like you said, make sure that every person in that board of directors is aligned with what you have. That doesn't mean that they agree with you all the time, because that is something that as a coach I always say, I'm going to be the coach that you need, not the coach that you want. And there is a big difference there. It's different. We can be aligned on the same values and the same goals, and still being able to be different, and being able to actually have somebody in your board of directors that call you out when you need it, that bring you back into center, that say, okay, time out, it's time to review this. So thank you for that. I really love how you say that. Is so important. The next thing that I want, because I want the moms to have some tools, because one of the most common things that I hear from my moms when I work with them is very hard, because we all are kinda, majority of us are people pleasers. We don't want to get confrontation. We don't want to make people feel bad. We don't want to hurt feelings, especially when they are close family or close friends, because we love them. So in those points, plus we are sleep deprived, plus we are exhausted, plus we are so busy with our babies. So ends being a lot of times we struggle with, like you were saying, politely but firmly putting our boundaries and say, hey, thank you, but this is what I'm doing. So why you don't talk with us a little bit about that? Like, what were the words that you use? Give us a couple of examples. Give us even some inspiration about if any of these mamas are having something like happened to you right now with breastfeeding, with sleeping with their baby, with diapers, with whatever it is. Tell us a couple of tips on how they can not only recognize it, but also how they can approach those people in a respectful way, with what kind of wording, what kind of strategies.
Well, how to recognize it? I think recognizing when someone else's opinions are kind of taking over what you're doing, it's hard. It actually is hard to recognize it sometimes, because it really has to do with our feelings. And our feelings dictate our actions. But then also remembering that we're always responsible for our responses. So recognizing that doing nothing is a response, as well as recognizing that being too aggressive is too aggressive. So there's a happy medium. But then also, but pay attention. First, pay attention to my advice, and my thoughts on that would be to first pay attention to your feelings, and pay attention to if you're feeling good at the end of the day, if you're feeling drained, if you're feeling like you didn't do the right thing. Pay attention to that and see how you can change little things. Also, pay attention to your relationship with your child. Is it enhancing? Is it depleting? What is actually happening between you and your child? And then you can start to recognize, wait a second, I didn't like that. I didn't appreciate that. And once you can recognize that relationship between you and your child, because that's more important than your relationship with those other two people, you know what I mean? And your relationship with your child is also more important than that child's relationship with the other two people. And I think that that is really key, especially when you are that child's first line of influence. And so recognizing it. And I would always say be kind. Kindness is much better than aggressiveness. So in being able to say simply, I really didn't like that. And I know it's hard, but maybe practicing it. Oh. Okay. Maybe practicing it and practicing it. You know, I'm going to show you this right now, because this is kind of the coolest thing that I've ever done with my children. And I know that I've showed you this, and this is so much fun, but I want you to hold your hand up right here, because communicating with our child is so key, right? And I was an American Sign Language interpreter for 4 years. And so take this, and you're going to pull these two, your middle finger and your ring finger, you're going to pull them down. And that right there means I love you. And I think that that is the coolest thing that you can share with your child, It is just a little tip, because if your child, like just now, my son came in, poked his head in, and I, down here below the camera, I said to him, I love you. So he knew right away that he's still important, that I still love him, but just to give him my space for a few minutes. And I think that is the best. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because it's
And
so much fun.
actually it's perfect, because one of the things that I was thinking when you were saying that is that could be a great anchor when you're having those tough conversations with family and friends. Like if I'm in front of you and I need to tell you, hey Georgia, thank you for your advice, and this is what is working for us, actually you could be doing that sign and have it in your lab, so you are actually reminding yourself that you are doing it from a space of love, and that it's okay to disagree, and that it's okay. Like one of the things that I really enjoy thinking about, that I want you to expand on, then is that the practice, but then is also saying it's okay to say thank you, that's your opinion, and this is what is working for us right now, or that will not work for my family, thank you so much, I appreciate that. So tell me what some of the ways that you think that it could be practiced, how some of the ways that we can start making that muscle to actually be the first line of defense. Because one of the things that is very important that G said, that I want all of you mamas to write down this. Your child learn from what you do, not what you said. And G said, your child is learning what to accept. I don't know if you remember earlier when she was talking about the restaurant. She said, I saw my child and I saw how my child was making a memory that that was something that will be acceptable to be treated like that. So it is very powerful, mommies. I know that this is not what you may not want to hear, but as a mom, you have twice the responsibility, because it's not only the responsibility for yourself, but every time that you take action, every time that you respect your boundaries, every time that you allow others to cross the boundaries, or every time that you hold your boundaries and don't let people break them, you are not only being honoring to yourself, you are actually teaching your children that it is okay to have boundaries, that it is okay to have limits, that it is okay to speak up for what we want. So I think that that is phenomenal, and I cannot agree with you more. Let's gonna talk a little bit more on how we can practice, and what kind of scenarios, or what kind of events like that could happen, and how we can address them, in your opinion.
In my opinion. So when my son, my very first son, he was brand new. He was, I feel like when I say he's brand new, I just bought him from a store. He was maybe 3 weeks old, and we had gone to a grocery store together, and he was in the stroller, and I was so proud of him. He was just adorable. And I got there, and a lady who I have known for years, she actually used to have the warehouse right next to our warehouse. And so we had become friends, and she came up, she saw him, oh my gosh, oh, he's so cute. And she immediately picked him up out of the stroller. And I was kind of like, okay, my space, my space, my space. And then another lady walked up. So there was three of us standing there. And we're all three standing there. And the lady who was holding my child goes, I'm going to go get some milk. I'll be right back. And I immediately stepped up and I said, no, that's okay. Go ahead and put him down. And I actually took him from her hands and I put him down. And I said, I'm not comfortable with that, but you're welcome to go get your milk and come back. And she said, oh, okay, and walked away. But I ran into her several years later because they had moved to a different warehouse. I ran into her several years later and everything was good. There wasn't any hardship, there wasn't anything. But that moment of saying, no, thank you, was a really, really strong moment. And I wish I had have recognized that at that point, because I could have carried that on. But now I know how to say things like that. And it was just simply, no, thank you, that's not going to work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. This is not the direction that we're going to go. And I can say that nicely and kindly, still have friends, still be accepted, still be polite. I don't need to freak out. I don't need to say, no, you're going to kidnap my child. I just need to say, no, thank you. I just need to say, I'm not comfortable with that.
I love those four. Let's gonna repeat them. No, thank you. That is not going to work for us. I'm not comfortable with that. And this is not going to work for us. So was that for one? Yeah. So those are four ways you can write them down. And I don't know if I miss one. G, tell me another one if I miss it. But you
That's
moms
all
can
right.
write,
Hang on, I'll think of it in just a second.
yeah, write it down because those are things that is good that you start practicing on saying. And then this is a tip that I'm gonna give you as a people please practice with the small things and practice with people that you don't care much about. What G was saying is very powerful. It was very easy for her to speak up and use her voice and say no, stop with this person, because she was not very close to her, was not her friend, her close friend, was not her family. As closer people are to us, as more challenging is for us emotionally to leave our boundaries up. So if you are struggling with that and you are not comfortable with things like that, start practicing with people, with the strangers. Start practicing with people that you know but are not close to you. So you can say, no, thank you. That is not going to work for us. I'm not comfortable with that. And as more you practice with them, as easier it's going to be to do it with your own family, with your own friends. Make sense?
One other thing I feel is that having a conversation with the people, for me, sometimes confrontation can be a little bit much for me personally. So, what I have found is a thing that will work for me is if I have a situation that I'm feeling, I can go to those people and I can say, I can tell them a story that relates to what I want to happen, and I can convey to them the message I'm trying to convey through someone else's story. And then when they agree with me or when they understand fully, it helps them change the way they're looking at the situation that they're trying to influence. So that's another trick too. Not a trick, but just another thing I've realized has helped.
Another tip to put in context. uh, One of the things that is very important on everything that we have been talking so far is, and one of the biggest mistakes, I know that I did it late, and that is why I create MomFit, to help moms to not do it. I know that G did it late. Is don't wait until after the fact to start getting very clear on the kind of mom that you want to be. You need to be clear on the mom that you want to be since you are pregnant. After your baby's born, you're going to be so busy that it's going to be a lot more challenging for you to have that clarity and that vision of the mom that you want to be. So my advice is, start as early as possible thinking about seeing role models around you. What are the characteristics and the things about mothers around you, or mothers that you see that you admire, the kind of mother that you want to be, what kind of parenting style you want to follow, and why. So that as more clear you are on those things, as more strong you are going to feel, and as more empowered you are going to feel to have those conversations, to look for those analogies. I will share with you, in December, I went to visit my in-laws. And my baby is the first baby in the family. So my mother-in-law was super excited and with love, because I know that it's with love. And as I'm sure that your friend or family on the story and your story was coming from love, love doesn't mean that it's okay. And that is something that we as moms need to understand. People can come from a perspective of love, and what they are doing and saying is still is not okay for us. So she was completely in love with my baby, and she started giving me parenting advice. And then every time that we were talking about a parenting decision, she will give us her opinion and how she will do it, and what we were doing may not work. And then I was there, and it happened with a situation very similar to your example on this on the supermarket that I remember. Is I am being very cautious about COVID, so I didn't want to have my baby around a lot of people. And we had a big party that I didn't knew was going to be a big party. I thought that was going to be a small party. And then the small party become like 30 people in the house. I was really uncomfortable. But the issue came after the fact when we were talking about it. Um, some of her comments was, well, it's okay because everybody is vaccinated. And that felt very much like a violation of what I wanted, because I didn't care about everybody being vaccinated. I care about my baby not being vaccinated. So, but I did what you did. Instead of emotionally in confrontation, arguing with her, I knew that she was coming from a place of love. I stopped that night. We sleep. I calm down, and the next morning I sit down in the floor in the living room with the baby, and almost start crying and tell her, I love you, and I know that you love us, and I know that you want the best for us, and I know that I'm not a perfect mom, and I know that I'm making mistakes, and I will make a lot of mistakes just as much as you did with your baby, with my husband. And I cannot live for the next 18 years having this back and forth with every parenting decision that I make. Like, I love you. And then when I want your input and your advice, I will ask you for it because I value your input. But when I'm sharing you something that I already decide, that is the parenting style and choice that we want to make. And she realized it, she stopped, and then she said, I'm sorry that I was making it hard for you. I didn't realize. I never want to make it hard for you. I know how hard it is to be a mom. Last thing that I want is to make it harder for you, so I'm sorry. So it's another example of how even when we feel that those boundaries are being crossed, we need to stop, calm down, figure out and remember that that is coming from love. And even when it's coming from love is not okay if it doesn't feel good with us. And then from that perspective, just go back and reinforce the boundary.
Well said. Beautifully said.
So as your kids start growing, because as babies are babies, we are a lot more tired, we're a lot more confused. Also, as your babies are growing and now are beautiful, young, talented, amazing kids, how are you finding, like, if the Georgia that is now having these beautiful boys could go back in time to the first year of life of your baby and or your pregnancy, what would be three things that you will share with that young Georgia that didn't have a support system, that was learning how to be mom by herself?
Well, the first key, the very, 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 very first thing that pops in my mind is something that I heard actually from my friend Stacy, from our friend Stacy, and I wish I had have heard it a long time ago. But when something like it's not that they're being difficult, it's that they're having a difficult time. And that to me, if I had have recognized that because we see things just from our own eyes, from our own perspective. But if I had have recognized that they see things from their own eyes, just like I see things from my own eyes, then I would have been able to recognize that when they were having a difficult time, it wasn't that they were being difficult. It wasn't that they were trying to ruin things for me. It's that they were struggling. And then I could have recognized that and I could have grown to support them.
Before you go to the next, I want to share because I know that one from Stacey too, and Stacey is going to come and talk about gentle parenting. And that was a huge change for me because when my baby was crying the first 4 months, there was days that he would just cry and cry and cry and cry. And then my mind will be like, why you're being so difficult? Why you are giving me such a hard time? I was able to remember that and say, he is not giving me a hard time. He is having a hard time. He's having a hard time falling asleep. He's having a hard time eating. And just that, like you said, helped me so much to feel so much more compassion and love for my tiny little baby. And then don't escalate but de-escalate and then breathe deeply and say, okay, if I think that my tiny baby is having a hard time, then there is no room for anger, there is no room for frustration, there is no room for anything, because then your motherhood love come in and you're like, oh my God, my baby's having a hard time. How I can help you? How I can make it better for you, my sweet baby. So thank you for that one. I use that one a lot too.
That was key number one. Um, let's see, two other things. Also, fun. Have fun. It's not all about learn and grow and become this person, and it's just about fun. And sometimes fun can look like throwing shaving cream across the kitchen at each other. You know what I mean? Like, it's fun can be anything. And I'm not saying don't worry about your children getting hurt, but kind of trust them a little bit more to recognize that, okay, they're not going to understand that they can't, put certain things in their mouth. So yes, you got to care about that, but just relax. I think that was one of, and recognize the fun. Be fun. Find the fun. Look for the fun. And that's a phenomenal way to raise our children, is with fun, teaching them how to find the fun, teaching them how to recognize the fun, and the appreciation of everything. One other thing, um, that the decision right here and now is not going to explode anything. No one's going to die if this happens. No one is going to implode. As moms, I don't know, for me at least, for me as a mom, I really put so much emphasis on all the tiny little things that were happening, and feeling like if I didn't get everything right, that things were going to turn out improper on the other end. But this story just popped in my mind, so I have to share this with you. When my son was about 4 years old, so they were 4 and 5, I was really, really big into meditating. And I mean, I still am, and a little bit before that too. But anyway, I would, every morning during my meditation, I got to this point where I was like, I just need to ask for patience. And so I would ask every single day for patience. Let me find my patience. Let me get my patience. Where is my patience? How do I utilize this patience? That's all I did, was focus on this word patience. And I was given the opportunity almost every single second of every day to practice this patience I was searching for. And then one day I really got it wrong. I sat down in my meditation and I just closed my eyes and I asked for a good day with my kids. And I got it. And I recognized that I didn't need to ask for the thing I didn't want, the patience. I didn't want to have to utilize patience. I didn't want to have to experience and search for it and find it. What I really wanted was a good day with my kids. So I recognized that I can ask for something different, ask for the result I want, not for the result I don't want. So ask for a good day with your kids and
That
you'll
is
get it.
that is so powerful. And I think that the second tip around relaxing and having fun, it's so important and so challenging for first time moms, especially in the fourth trimester. And that go link into how important it is to have your support team, your village, your board of directors. Because if you are a first time mom, if you are in the fourth trimester, if you have a newborn, and then you don't have a support system, you don't have a board of directors, you don't have a team around you, it's going to be a lot more hard. It's going to be harder for you to actually find the fun and don't stress about things. So before we leave, I want you to talk a little bit about maybe one or two things that you do to find fun. And then your third tip is absolutely on spot. And we are going to go here into the woo woo, but that is what we do in MomFit. Is the universe, God, the angels, however you want to call them, they are always listening and giving us what we are asking for. So if we are asking for patience, then they are giving us opportunities to practice that. So I agree with you. So that is a great tip is mamas, don't ask for what you don't want, ask for what you want. Actually, I start doing that recently, funny enough, with my baby because my baby's not sleeping throughout the night, and every night I will be like, "Oh, can we just sleep better? Can how we can get better sleeping?" And it was not working. And just a week ago, I start when he was nursing at night. I start giving him affirmations. You are loved. You are wonderful. And I start adding, "You are a good sleeper. You're a good sleeper. You're a good sleeper." And then we are not sleeping throughout the night yet, but he's now sleeping 5 hours, 6 hours when he was sleeping only three. So that is very powerful. Now, tell me two ways that you find the fun that you can teach your kids to be fun before we close up.
So when I was little, I loved going to birthday parties. I always thought birthday parties were the absolute best. And we never had any cool birthday parties, but now we have this little website called like Etsy or Pinterest or even Facebook, like you can look at other things. And I like to plan little birthdays. So I feel that if a day it feels like a birthday, it ends up being a lot of fun. So you can get a lot of different ideas by planning a little mini birthday. So you can I have boys, and what do boys like? They like things that explode. So you can take like a soda pop and you could like a Coca-Cola and you can drop a Mentos in it and it'll explode. And it's just kids love it. And oh, my son said use Diet Coke because you'll get the best explosion out of it. So
Thank you.
so but there are lots of different little ideas. You could look up different like boys' birthday ideas, girls' birthday ideas, and then you can come up with these tiny little activities that you can do with your children that end up being kind of free almost, and they end up being just a lot of fun because they're easy to do. They don't take a lot, and they're enjoyable. And then your children also learn from it. And also things like cooking with your kids is fun, where they get to use their hands. Anything where they get to use their hands, they love that. And making sure too that they're honored in the things that they feel like they want to do. So if somebody does want to play a video game, I do feel um, like honoring that space for them to be them is okay as well. I'm not saying go to video games and they should be there all the time. And there are limits. Yes, 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 many, many limits. But I do think that honoring the different things that they say that they want to do helps them bring the fun in as well.
Thank you so much. Uh, Time flies when we are having fun. We are getting close to the end of this episode of MomFit. And to wrap up, we have a lot of content. We have a lot of golden nuggets. The most important one, in my opinion, that we were talking about is how you as a mom can recognize when people are getting in between what you want and what you feel is right for you and your baby. And Georgia was giving us a lot of tips into how to go there and how to actually create strong boundaries and create, hi, honey, and create a strong processes to actually be truthful and be honor the most important relationship, the two most important relationship that we have in the world. The first one is the relationship with our child, and the second one is the relationship with ourselves. So Georgia, thank you so much for sharing with us. I'm gonna put in the comments how the audience Monfit Culture can reach out to you and follow you in Instagram and Facebook. I know that you have amazing things all the time around meditation and inspiration, and you are doing such an important work. Before we leave, one last thing that you want to tell the Monfit community, the Monfit moms.
One last thing. Um, Trust that your kids are going to hang on for the ride.
Trust that your kids are going to hang out for the ride. They totally are. And I will close with mine, and that is you are the perfect mom for your child, even on the days that you don't feel like it. Trust that your child is yours for a reason. and nothing that you do is going to take that away. Well, this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it.